What is good, YouTube? It's that one camera guy back at it again with another video. In this episode, I go over the in-body image stabilization on the Sony a6500. I went ahead and tested it out to see if it was any good and whether or not it'll help you out. So the test that I did was fairly simple. I went ahead and took the 70-200 f4 non-IBIS Canon lens. I'm using the Sigma MC11 adapter to attach it to the camera, and I ran some tests. The first thing I did was I took some photos. I shot at 1/15th of a second, 1/30th of a second, and 1/60th of a second to see how well it would do with and without the image stabilization. I shot at 200 millimeters, which was kind of my target area anyway because it's the furthest range of the lens and would have the biggest opportunity and chance for it to have motion blur in the photo, or just blur because of hand movement, handshake with the lens. And so that's how I kind of approached it. Now, ideally you want to test it in real world scenarios and it'll be much better that way, but this was the situation that I was in, and so this is how I tested it out. So as far as what I noticed, you can definitely get hand-holdable shots at 1/15th of a second, but you still run the risk of it not hitting target. What I noticed is that the stabilization really helps kind of level off the photos. When you're shooting, I basically shot with the viewfinder, the monitor on the back, and I did this. I held it the same way each time. So I basically held the camera like this towards me as I shot the photos, and I held it steady, and I did this the same with every single situation. I didn't change it. And what I found out from the test is that for the most part at 1/15th and 1/30th of a second, it helps tremendously with keeping it steady and focused and being able to shoot at lower shutter speeds. At 1/60th of a second, you know, it's possible to get a frame that's not out of blurry without stabilization, so it's a lot easier to do. So you're going to have to do some more tests on your own if you want to know more about it, but the way I see it right now, I wouldn't really put myself in a situation to shoot at 200 millimeters at 1/15th of a second. I would rarely ever find myself in the need to have to do something like that. So that was the first test, the image test. The second type of test I did was in video, and I tested a number of lenses, but I went back to the 70-200 f4, which was just kind of a good indicator. I started my focus at I started my zoom range at 70, ran it with and without stabilization, then I went to, I think, 135, and then 200. I also, oh, and you can see the examples. You can definitely see little micro jitters when the stabilization is off. But when you have stabilization on, it really helps correct some of that jitter that you see or you've seen on the a6300. So that is a really nice addition to that lens. Well, not lens, but the actual body of the camera. I also tested out on the Sigma 18-35 and the 50-100 1.8. And what's really nice that I noticed is that if you're using a lens that obviously autofocuses, Sony will automatically detect the focal length range of that lens. So you don't have to go into the system and manually adjust the focus, the zoom range of that lens to accommodate for the stabilization. It just does it on its own. So for example, if I start at 18 millimeters on the lens and I zoom to 35, the camera knows what range I'm at, and I don't have to worry about it. And it's the same for the the Canon 70-200 f4. It knows when I'm at 70, it knows when I'm at 135 and at 200, so I'm not having to manually adjust any values with in-body image stabilization. Another thing to point out is that the lens already has image stabilization. So for example, I went ahead and mounted the 24-105 stabilized lens from Canon, and if you have stabilization already on the lens, it tells you to turn it on with this. So it detects that it already has stabilization, and I can't turn it on inside of the camera. They basically say use the switch to activate stabilization. And that's the same with a Canon lens as well. So if the lens already has stabilization, I'm not sure whether or not it combines both stabilizations, but if the lens already has it, it won't use the in-body stabilization from what it looks like. I could be completely wrong. Feel free to correct me down below. So my conclusion with the in-body image stabilization on the a6500. For the initial impression that I have so far, I think Sony's done a really good job of implementing it. It's kind of a set it, you forget it kind of scenario where it just works. And you can definitely see it from the examples I've shown you that it does help stabilize that footage and keeps it leveled, especially in videos. If you do a lot of handheld work, the stabilization is going to be a big plus for a lot of us out there. And those of you who take pictures, you will be able to shoot at slower shutter speeds to kind of bring down your ISO and keep your images nicer. So that is really, really nice to have. Folks, that's all I got for you in this video. If you found it helpful, consider giving it a like. If you do want to see more content about the a6500 that I'll be posting, consider subscribing. And with that said, I'm your host, Owen Camera Guy, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.